So, as you can tell by the coloured background, we are talking about Ireland this week. I am a Northern Irishman, and probably worse than that for anyone from down there, I am Protestant.
The prods have landed.
But nonetheless, I want to talk about what happened in Dublin last week. So, an Algerian immigrant stabbed 3 school children on the street in Dublin, as well as 2 adults who were trying to protect those children. One of the children is still in critical care, a 5-year-old. I believe the others were also aged 5 and 6. And this is on the back of mass immigration being a big issue in Ireland over the last few years, and on the back of it there were therefore riots on the streets of Dublin. The media and the Irish government capitalised on the response to say that anything like this was simply stoked up by far-right extremists, and they're trying to bring in some of the most draconian hate speech laws in the world. I want to make 4 points on this, 3 of which are about how and why the Irish Church should respond, but the first of which is in fact a clarification and an apology. So as this was unfolding, I jumped onto Twitter and I said that the Irish people were right to be angry about this, and that the Irish Church does in fact need to speak up and say something. Some guys from a church nearby to me, a church for whom I have a lot of respect, and one of the guys whom I know of, though I don't know any of them personally, I also have a lot of respect for. Well, they pushed back, they weren't totally happy with what I said. I think I interacted in a way that was reasonable and fair, and offered to meet up and discuss it. Haven't heard any more from them since. That's fine, they don't owe me a chat or anything like that. Just want to let you know that that is partly the cause of this, and also that I'm not angry and I don't mind getting some pushback. And I did go away and think off the back of it, what should I have done differently, if anything?
That's very mature.
I'm not conceding the overall point, but I do want to add a couple of things. Firstly, I tweeted this before there was any sign of rioting. I absolutely abominate rioting. I will talk about that more, but I just want to put that timeline in place because I think that's important. And secondly, and more importantly, I want to acknowledge the role of believers from other countries than Ireland within the Irish Church. So for those who don't know, Ireland is somewhere between maybe 1 and 1.5% evangelical. Depending on your view of the Catholic Church, that would leave it as the least reached nation in the English-speaking world. And of that 1 to 1.5%, half of those are foreign-born. They are not native Irish. As I said in my original video, my wife is from Bulgaria, so, she is, although we're on the other side of the border, she would be one of those believers on this island who's from elsewhere. And I know believers from all over the world involved in the Irish Church. I know pastors from Poland, Romania, Brazil, the African continent.
Dick Burns lot have a new fella. Supposed to be flip hot and Italian.
They're faithful believers, they're functioning as missionaries, attempting to reach the Irish people, and I want to honour them, and I genuinely do love them for it. It needs done, and they are a big part of why people in Ireland are starting to be reached with the gospel. So very important. To not have added that in my original video on migration, being in the context in which I am, being here in Ireland, was wrong. It was an oversight. I should have said something about that. It wasn't intentional. I wasn't trying to look at that. It wasn't something I intentionally overlooked. But I would like to apologise to any believers from elsewhere. Hopefully, if you watch that video, you'll see that I definitely am not talking about Bible-believing Christians coming here trying to reach the Irish people. That's not what I was referring to at all. But to not have said so more clearly and plainly, I believe now in hindsight was a significant oversight, and I'm sorry for doing it, and I do ask your forgiveness. That's point 1. Okay, so that first point leads us to our second point, which is why the Irish Church finds this issue hard to talk about, although I think, in fact, if you think clearly, they shouldn't. When the church is so dependent on people from across the world to keep it afloat, both financially and in terms of ministry workers, well, it feels hard to say something about migration more broadly, in spite of the fact that it is the #1 issue facing the Irish nation right now. But here is why it shouldn't be hard. Let's build some suspense. Let's pull the camera in a little bit. Here we go. Most immigrants agree. Most immigrants hold to the same position.
I must tell you, I am shocked.
In my experience, immigrants from other countries who are well-meaning, who are here for legitimate reasons, don't want people like Algerian maniacs who knife school children to be in this country. It is the country in which they now also live. They don't want to live near people like that. They don't think that people like that should have the right to remain here. And legitimate immigrants also know that this is a huge issue. Since 2019, let me read you the stats. Rape is up 13%, murder is up 16%, harassment, stalking and threats are up 18%, and human trafficking is up 110% in the Republic of Ireland. That is something that legitimate migrants do not want. They do not want those people entering in their country without being properly screened. They are equally horrified as Irish people by these incidents. They are horrified by the stabbing of school children. They are horrified by what happened with Joseph Puska and Yusuf Palani. They do not want those people brought into this country either. They also know that too many people are coming in. Last year, the nation of Ireland brought in 140,000 people. Now, if you were to put them into one city, that would be the third largest city in the country. It would be slightly smaller than Cork and slightly larger than Limerick. To keep housing costs just at the same level, you would need to build a city larger than Limerick, almost the size of Cork, every single year if that rate continues. Doing so is condemning a generation of Irish people to poverty, condemning them to never owning a home. And the same is true for migrants and their future children. And so this shouldn't be hard to talk about. Christians from any country can agree that we need to have a reasonable amount of people coming in and the right kind of people coming in. And I would actually encourage you, if you're a believer in Ireland and you're from somewhere else, write to your pastors, write to your elders and say, if you talk about this publicly, I'm actually going to back you on it. We too do not want people like that who would stab school children or commit these other terrorist acts brought into our nation. Alright, point 3, let's talk about riots, racism and the reaction. It is right for the Irish Church to be concerned about this. It is right for the Irish Church to talk about this and talk about it clearly. Such a reaction is not acceptable, and just because something bad happens does not justify people doing something bad in return. It also undermines the point. The next day, the headlines and all of the talk was not about the stabbing of school children, it was about the reaction to that. I think it is important to remember that stabbing school children is worse than burning a bus, which someone should probably tell the trade union workers who stood outside the next day in solidarity, not with the stabbed school children, but with Foot Locker and McDonald's who had their windows smashed.
So it's in solidarity with everybody in Dublin, more importantly the workers. What about the children?
Not good smashed windows, nonetheless, school children definitely more important. The big issue with this is that such a reaction, though not acceptable, is unsurprising. 75% of the Irish population agree that this is a significant issue, and yet they are being told that they are racist and xenophobic for thinking so. Now, in my experience, the Irish people are not, and I say that as an Ulsterman who would probably not go down well in certain quarters of Dublin.
Oh, together now! Ulster is British.
But when we look at the reaction, they were very positive towards the Brazilian man who intervened. They wanted to give him the key of the city. So I don't think that there's some sort of underlying racism behind most of this. They are in general not saying that they hate everywhere else. What they are saying is we can't accommodate the entire world and we should check that those who are here both need to be here and are safe for us to have here. That is a perfectly reasonable position for the people of Ireland to have. When that position, however, gets treated as extreme, then you get an extreme reaction. So what's happening? Well, Conor McGregor is now looking like he could run for office, and to be honest, I think he would have a good chance of winning. Conor McGregor is an Irish sporting legend. He is extremely good at punching people in the face. Nonetheless, I don't think he'd make a great political leader. I don't think you want him as the next Taoiseach, okay? He doesn't seem to know a lot about politics. He might be better than the other available options. We'll get to that in a second. But nonetheless, that is the kind of thing that can happen when normal people are treated as extremists. And this is a big part of the reason why the Irish Church needs to speak on this. Your people need wisdom. They lack wisdom. They lack wisdom from all quarters, and you have it, and you can say something about it. And point 4 is this. The Irish government is starting to verge on tyranny. The response of the Irish government has not been to look at, okay, how did this man, who was supposed to be deported in 2003, get leave to remain here and then Irish citizenship, despite apparently never having worked a day in his life? How did that happen and how was that allowed? That's not what they've said at all. What they have instead said is that they're going to bring in one of the most draconian and evil hate speech laws in the Western world.
That's exactly what we're doing here, is we are restricting freedom, but we're doing it for the common good.
All about the greater good.
The greater good.
This law, if passed, will outlaw hate speech without defining what hate speech is, which means that people are left up to the mercy of the judge or the government as to what they are allowed to say in any given moment. That will be abused. It also says that you're not allowed to possess anything considered to be hate speech. So it's not even broadcasting, it's not even saying something, it's having a book or having a meme or having a note written in your phone that could be in any way considered hateful. You can also receive up to 12 months in prison for refusing to share your passwords with the police to every device in your house when asked. So do you want to bet how this is going to be used? It's going to be used against Christians, it's going to be used against Bible passages, it's going to be used against sermons, and it will not matter whether you are from Ireland or from elsewhere. In this matter, you will absolutely be treated equally and it will be awful. Leo Varadkar is verging on becoming a tyrant, the deep state around him is very tyrannical, and these laws will be used to persecute the church regardless of where they are born. The church should speak against this absolutely immediately before it's too late. Now, all that said, I believe this is an opportunity for the Irish Church, both to avoid a national catastrophe, also to speak truth to power, but also to demonstrate the kingdom of God. See, Matthew 5 tells us that blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. Being a peacemaker, though, is not an easy job. It is not simply walking into a situation like this and saying, let's everybody calm down and get along. There is a real problem here. There's real evil happening and there's a real bad response happening. An Irish church, you can be part of finding a legitimate solution to this. You can be the ones saying, yes, there are people that are good for our nation from elsewhere. We love them and we want them here. Bible-believing Christians, that's you. And there are people that are dangerous that should not be allowed in. Criminals, rapists, Islamists, that's you. I believe this is something that Christians in Ireland, whether you're from there or from elsewhere, can do together. I urge you to do it. I love you and I'm praying for you. Thank you so much for watching. If this video was helpful to you, I would like you to just reach into your screen and sort of, you know the way Neo sort of merged with the computers in the Matrix? If you could do that and then get in there and hold down the like button, or alternatively just press it in a normal way, that would be very helpful. If you're on Twitter, you can repost and do all of that stuff there. If you'd like to support the channel, Patreon, PayPal, we are ContraMundum.com. And of course, if you are on YouTube, you can watch this other video. Thanks.